Even from an early age, Queek Headtaker, warlord of Clan Moors and lord of the City of Pillars, was marked for greatness. The biggest in his litter of vicious pups, and the only one left alive after he was done eating the others, he ascended into the upper echelons of Skavendom unlike any before him. A fearless warrior and veteran of countless battles, he became an instrument of Lord Nodwell and the Council of 13, sent to the Southlands to do what he did best, smite dwarfs. With the severed hands of Baron Albrecht Kraus and the head of King Krug Ironhand adorning his legendary trophy rack, the Headtaker had already etched his name into the Damaz Crown 1,000 times over in his short life, and as he and his infamous Red Guard plunged into the depths of Karak Zorn, it seemed inevitable there would be more entries before the war was over. It took a fierce Skaven to survive the underground slaughterways of Karak 8 Peaks. To join the most elite claw packs of Clan Moors, the Skaven had to possess extraordinary strength, agility, and martial prowess. Queek personally selected and oversaw the training of his elite Stormvermin, and they were given the best arms, armor, feeding, and breeding rights of all the troops under his command. As the invasion force scrambled through massive tunnels towards the heart of the legendary mountain, Queek wondered, how many holes into the depths beneath Karak Zorn would the dwarfs need to burrow before learning there was no use hiding from the Headtaker? Of course, the Dwarfs of Karak Zorn weren't hiding. The legendary Mountain of Gold had survived millennia cut off from the Karazhan'kor and sister holds of the World's Edge Mountains, surrounded by the savage Lizardmen of the Southlands and the undead Kemrian Empire to the north, whose terrifying constructs, legions of skeletons, and fell magic had sealed the pathways to the Silver Road lifetimes ago. They were a hardy, stubborn people, as all dwarfs were, and rich too. It was not uncommon for the explorers of the old world to falsely claim they had seen the famous Karak with their own two eyes, but unbeknownst to them, their tales of fabulous wealth and riches were not far off the mark. After all, how else would an isolated hold surrounded by enemies for thousands of years maintain their sovereignty and their way of life? Piles of gold, gemstones, and precious gromril beyond imagining, and a driven population who knew how to make these materials work for them. Alliances were forged with the children of the Old Ones, fine weaponry and armor were crafted, and the Ironbreakers and Longbeards of Karak Zorn carved out an empire amidst the fortune of the mountain. But their fortune was perhaps about to turn. For Queek Headtaker and the numberless hordes of Clan Moors were coming, and in the cavernous warpstone causeways of the Skaven Under Empire, the fate of Karak Zorn would be decided. So the right hand of Lord Nodwell leads his claw packs into these sprawling warpstone caverns, and we get to see something that I think a lot of us have been waiting to see for a very long time. The timeless underground rivalry between the Skaven and the dwarfs. The trophy rack on Queek's back is honestly one of the grimmest things I've seen in a teen-rated game. I'm actually super surprised that, or the flayed man and decapitated head on Wolfric Shield, made it past the ratings board. I'd be very interested to hear how that even happened, because it is pretty brutal. But while this battle is going on, we're going to be going more for a cinematic style than the ultra-competitive kind, because it is an underway battle and typically less opportunity for flanking and that kind of stuff. But the question remains, how are these two factions going to match up when Mortal Empires comes out? There's some people already saying that Skaven are arguably the worst faction in Total War Warhammer 2, that they need the summons bug to compete appropriately, even though that's currently being banned in tournaments. And then I'm sure there's a good portion of the community that expects that the Dwarfs will be completely rolled over in this matchup. Literally, we just saw the Doomwheel. The Skaven have abundant armor piercing, as well as improved magic, and that might be a nightmare matchup for the Dawi. Now, we already know that Game 1 races are being updated and rebalanced for Game 2. We just don't know to what extent yet. This battle was played on Radius on the same day as the Vampire Coast and Lizardmen matchup, and we're still probably a month out or so from the release of Mortal Empires and all the rebalancing changes. Hopefully, some of the lesser known or lesser powerful races in Game 1 will definitely get some good buffs to bring them up to speed with the rest of the pack. But these are the Karak Zorn Dwarfs, and it is Radius, so there are a few new units here, but we're not going very far outside what's in the base game. There are Longbeards with great weapons, or Ironbreakers with great weapons, and Slayers with hammers, but really nothing too out of the ordinary there. It's going to be an interesting matchup because both sides have a ton of artillery, which means, depending on who wins the arty battle, either side can force their opponent into a pretty hasty engagement. Plagueclaw Catapults are more brutal to infantry than grudge throwers, especially with that leadership debuff, but I'd imagine cannons are significantly better at sniping enemy artillery, and the flame cannon is tailor-made for incinerating blobs of ratmen in underway battles like this one. A lot of Stormvermin on the field for Queek Headtaker. Of course, got to bring his Red Guard. And those Deathglow Bombardiers could spell some serious trouble for the Dawi. I am curious. They do magical damage, but they also have a ton of AP. So I don't know how much either of those cancel each other out. I would imagine those Bombardiers can do quite a bit of damage to the Dwarfs if they land some good shots in the middle of the infantry engagement. So Clan Rats moving up the center, looking ready to meet shield in the front lines. And the Plagueclaws are spreading their filth in the middle of the Longbeards, who are moving up now. Gonna be waves upon waves of both sides, the wave tactics in this battle. Of course, you can't really do anything else because of the way the choke point is set up. Gonna be Clan Rats for the Skaven first, and Miners with blasting charges for the Dwarfs first. So I'd imagine those blasting charges are gonna do some serious damage to the Skaven front lines, but it's also gonna go into a bunch of chaff that don't really matter a whole lot. Next wave of Plague coming in, getting some really good shots into the middle of those Longbeards. And this is by far my favorite underground map. I think that maybe Paulo or like one or two other YouTubers have maybe already done a battle on this map, but it is really interesting. This is the kind of thing that I want to see out of underway maps and map design from Total War going forward. These pillars really change the outlook of the battle because you can fight on both sides of them. It creates choke points, but areas that you can fight around and kind of change the complexion of how a normal battle would go. Normal underway battles, it just, there's the red line on your right side, there's a red line on your left side, and you move forward. In this case, there's a little bit more to think about in terms of positioning and strategy, which I'm always a big fan of. Nice blasting charges going off on those Clan Rats. At least half of them died in that first volley. And if the Miners get some good shots off, pull back and allow the Longbeards to take a charge, that's probably ideal. More Plagueclaw stuff going overhead. One of the awesome sight right there, landing in the back. Maybe trying to snipe some artillery. Doomwheels up the center. And that is where you expect to see them, right? They're going to be, I think, really terrifying for the Dwarfs to deal with. There are a couple tools the Dwarfs are going to get in Mortal Empires, I believe. One thing I have heard, and I think this might have already been confirmed, as we get a big Rat Ogre charge coming through, smashing through the front lines of the Dwarfs, is that the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin and Wrath and Ruin might get a slowing ability attached to the skill, so it might actually make stuff like Doomwheels pulling through a lot harder because you pop a Rune, Wrath and Ruin on them and do some damage to it, and also dramatically limit their mobility as well, which is a pretty big deal. So might be some interesting counterplay with Slayers and a slowing debuff if that actually makes it into the next round of balancing. But meanwhile, it's absolute pandemonium exploding in the underway as both the Miners and the Clan Rats melted away in the face of Withering Fire and surprise Rat Ogres. I swear that charge is so satisfying. Stormvermin and a Doomwheel moving up on the left flank and in the center. Everything is dying. Flame cannons just incinerating everything in their path, as well as the blasting charges. That flame cannon is, like I said, tailor-made for a situation like this where they're kind of forced into a choke point and everything is kind of blobbing up, and it's getting a ton of kills, racking them up right now. But the Deathglow Bombardiers are doing the exact same thing on the other side. The Dragon Company and Ironbreakers and some Longbeards have waded into melee over on the Dwarf left flank as Stormvermin and Clan Rats try to push through. Dragon Company and Ironbreakers should be able to hold for a very long time there. And there is some routing on the field as the Clan Rats get summoned in the back lines, and they might go for the Skirmishers. And the Plague Furnace also wading in as well, spreading disease and pestilence wherever it marches. And the Plague Priest marches as well. And Queek Headtaker doing what he does best, smiting Dwarfs. In there with Dwarf Gouger, in there with the Trophy Rack. And I think some Dwarfs are about to have a very, very bad day. Protect your neck. The Headtaker might put a spiked maul through it if you aren't careful. But bolstered by the presence of their Lord, the Red Guard Stormvermin look to be in a good position there. Slight uphill advantage for them. And the Doomwheel rolling through those Ironbreakers without a problem. Two of them now in tandem working with each other. My favorite thing about this thing, it's not being able to run over units, which is hilarious in and of itself, but the way it kind of randomly shoots out Warp Lightning in all directions, you'll actually rack up some pretty serious amount of kills sometimes with it, which is incredibly satisfying. Love doing that, but the cannons are doing a good job of sniping down the Plague Furnace. It's taking a lot of damage now, and Queek has busted through the main line and might look for the artillery crews or the enemy Lord. And I don't really care how strong your Lord is, you probably don't want to duel Queek 1v1 unless you're a monster that can kind of throw them all around, because if you're on foot, when you're dealing with that much AP and Trophy Head in a 1v1 engagement, Queek's going to give you a lot of trouble. He has a lot of AP, and Trophy Heads is like, what, minus 27 melee attack, minus 46 melee defense or something. He's going to hurt you real bad. So you don't really want to deal with that at all in a 1v1 scenario. So more Clan Rats are being summoned by the Plague Priest, and as the clan rats sally out of the underway. Slayers with, I guess these are giant slayers with the hammers, moving up. And they're gonna pancake those Skaven into the ground, but the Doomwheel's gonna do the same thing to the slayers here. Can they slow it down? Dealing with that Doomwheel for the dwarfs. Right now, pretty tough. Manages to pull out more Plagueclaw shots coming in, landing amidst the artillery crews in the back. Clan rats might look to go deal with them pretty soon here. And the Doomwheel still doing what it does best, rolling over stunties, rolling over the Dawi, and the flame cannon has shot unabated for the last 5 or so minutes, which, as you know, if you give that thing time to fire, it will get a massive amount of kills. I'm really looking forward to seeing how many kills it gets at the end there. And oh, big shot, putting the hurt on those Death Glow Bombardiers. Now Stormvermin looking to get into the thick of the fighting as well. The middle is kind of broken for the dwarfs here, but the flanks are holding strong for now. Doomwheel might have something to say about that, though. Coming in from the middle, trying to flank around, getting some Doomwheel shots into the back lines, and then charging in from behind. Huge hammer and anvil, and getting some really close-up shots with the Warp Lightning as well. That might just be enough to cause a collapse of the dwarf left flank. Ironbreakers and Dragon Company are still in there. They do have great leadership. Don't think they'll rout anytime soon, but will it matter? They're all dead. It doesn't really matter if you're routed, right? That will still allow the Stormvermin to break through. Flame Cannon just got some really nasty shots, and actually some nice Skaven-friendly fire there as well. Some Stormvermin taking some nasty shots from the Plagueclaw Catapults in the back of that formation. But while the Flame Cannon has been shooting this whole time, so have the Plagueclaw Catapults. Really nothing has been done to silence them. Dwarfs don't have a ton of mobility, of course. Thunder is firing in, getting some very good shots in from close range. Gonna take the heads off quite a few of the Stormvermin, but that's 3 Plagueclaws, and that means a lot of death from range. You can just see that green sickly glow constantly streaming in to batter the Dwarfen defenses, and the Dawi of Karak Zorn are on the back foot here. Now, one thing I would love to see given to the dwarfs is the ability to summon a group of miners within maybe like an 80-meter radius of their lord or something. Could literally give them the exact same animation as the clan rats summon, with the ground breaking apart and the miners streaming out. But this is what they did on the tabletop. They entered the game from any tabletop edge they wanted and appeared near enemy skirmishers and artillery crews just to cause a bit of havoc in the back. And it would give them a lot of extra utility and some counters to range firepower, which I think would be really good for them without being stupidly broken. So I wonder if, or how, CA will handle the Dawi rebalance. I really don't think they need a ton. They just need a little bit, because we've seen, even with a little small changes here and there was a time there where the dwarfs were pretty terrifying in 1v1, and they still win some tournaments, but usually it's with like kind of crazy outside the box builds that you don't really expect to see, because people don't necessarily expect a strong Dwarfen build, but they can be very solid. I don't think they're an awful faction whatsoever. They can have some issues dealing with stuff like Doomwheels and Chariots, though. No question about that. The Doomwheel is just going to completely roll over those dudes. So much fun to watch, but not as much fun if you're a big Dawi fan. And now, Queek Headtaker and the Dwarfen Lord are going to duel to the death here. Well, maybe. We'll see. I wouldn't blame the Dwarfen Lord if he ran away. Queek is huge there, man. He's actually, like, significantly bigger than the Dwarf. And with Dwarf Gouger, with his sword and spiked maul, I think he's probably going to win that with all the armor-piercing damage that he has. And Trophy Heads just going to make that so tough for a regular Dwarfen Lord to handle. Of course, Dwarfen Lord costs much less, will get knocked down. Don't think he's dead yet. Yeah, we'll get up, but the Dwarfen defense has crumbled here. Deathglow Bombardiers and the Doomwheels and the Rat Ogre charge up the center, which was incredibly epic to watch. And the Plagueclaw Catapults especially have proved too much. And Queek Headtaker and the Skaven of Clan Moors will take over Karak Zorn and the famous legendary Dawi hold. So yeah, there's obviously stuff in the matchup that will give dwarfs fits, I feel, like the Doomwheels, like the summons, especially if they remain the same way they do until Mortal Empires, but imagine that'll get patched out before then. But remember, these are essentially Game 1 dwarfs going up against Game 2 Skaven. We know there are unit rebalances and changes coming with Mortal Empires for all the Game 1 factions, so it remains to be seen where the dwarfs will come out on the other side of that patch. And let's be honest, it's not like an underway battle with 24,000 funds is a good representation of balance anyway. Just a fun cinematic battle to watch these two hated rivals go at it. But really fun battle anyway. We can see the Plagueclaws and the Doomwheels just did so much work. Almost all of them getting up to 100 kills. Flame Cannon, 260 though. Pretty crazy on that. Really hope you guys enjoyed the battle. We'll be bringing more content soon. Thanks for watching. Any Pride signing out for now.